There are evacuees on Kabul right now being processed through all stages of, the process there to be ready to fly.
But you don't have the number?
I don't have the exact number. I don't just when I left here, but we have folks ready to evacuate.
We can get you the number that's on the airport now. It does, as the general said, it literally changes by the hour. I mean, if you think about what we did yesterday, it's virtually, you just do the math, it's almost 1,000 people per hour over the last 24 hours, so it changes a lot. So it's a fair question. We'll take it. We'll get you the number of what there's now. I would just caution you to understand that number constantly changes. That's the whole goal, is to keep the throughput. So you get down to a certain level, and then you get more, and you just keep moving people through. It's constantly fluid. Yeah.
Thanks, John. Good morning. I know you said you're fixed on August 31st as the departure date.
Hang on just a second. Brooke, I think we can probably find that number now. Can you just go get it and bring it up here? So we don't have to wait till the end of the briefing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You had said earlier you're fixed on August 31st as a departure date. Nevertheless, there is some discussion of the possibility of changing that mission. Does something like that fall under what you would call sometimes speculation, or that fall under what you would call planning? Because you've always made a distinction between those two when we ask you about possibility of things, and I'm just trying to get clarity on that. Thanks.
I'm not completely sure I understand the question, so let me take a stab at it, and if I fail, you can tell me I failed.
I would never do that.
The President's direction has been to complete this withdrawal, this evacuation and withdrawal by the 31st of August. That is the direction that we are operating under, and therefore that is driving a lot of our plans. You heard us say, and you heard the Secretary say that if there needed to be a conversation about changing that he would have that conversation. I'm not going to get into internal deliberations about what people may be thinking one way or the other. But you heard the National Security Advisor say yesterday that he believes that we can accomplish this mission by the end of the month. So we are still driving towards the end of the month. That's where we are now. And if and when there's any change to that, we'll certainly make it clear to the American people.
John, is because in the past couple of weeks, the Pentagon has come under, rightly or wrongly, criticism for not, quote unquote, planning for eventualities that seem to have happened in Kabul. And so this seems to be a possible eventuality of a mission that may have to extend past the deadline. So I was just asking, is there planning going on in the event that this has to happen?
We are a planning organization, Tom. We plan for all manner of contingencies, even as we execute the orders that we've been given, and that's what we're doing right now. Megan.
So you've always said that airlift is not the limiting factor here. Obviously, there are a lot more people getting into the airport and getting out. What do you attribute that to? Is that expanding the perimeter? Are there checkpoints that are getting more people through? And we know we don't have the number of how many people are on each Kiev right now, but about how long are they spending there before they're able to get on a plane?
Yeah, so within the last 48 hours, that timeline of staying in Kabul has been very short. As soon as we are getting people in and processed, as you can see, a flight every 45 minutes is a lot in getting people out of there. So as we look at what have been the factors behind that, numerous. Weather continues to play in everybody's factor. Great coalition and partners and other people volunteering aircraft. And as General Lyon said yesterday, the ability to get not only the aircraft coming into Kabul, but others providing aircraft to fly, people from the lily pads or the safe havens into the States and then moving them around has allowed us to keep that throughput going. And then also, I think the continued ability to inform and get the word out of how to get into the gates, where to come, the processing of those not only through the gates, but the processing internally on Kabul by our troops that are there continues to become more efficient.
So are there more people showing up now than there were last week when there was so much panic?
I would say as we look at those that are showing up with the right documentation, the right people that have come, I think is one factor that has allowed us to increase the throughput.
And there also have been, there's the the crush of those first few days has reduced. As more order and structure around the airport has increased, security, the processing flow itself has just gotten better, and the crowds around the airport are smaller than they were before. So the situation around the airport right now is just not the same. It's not as chaotic as it was in those first couple of days. Therese?
Thank you for taking my question. I've spoken to service members and spouses on one of the bases where evacuees are expected to be housed, and they have a serious concern about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So what are service members or anyone living on these bases being briefed to try to ease that concern? Because obviously, as of yesterday, they're still very concerned about that issue.
Oh, sure. And they have every right to be. We're in the midst of a pandemic and conducting one of the largest airlift operations in recent American history is no small feat in the best of circumstances, and this one is obviously not the best of circumstances because, in addition to this, we're doing it in the midst of a COVID pandemic. What I can tell you is that screening occurs at every stop, at every stage of the process, and we're doing the best we can to make sure that we've got enough visibility on everyone's health. But again, we're really, the focus is on getting the numbers out. And so there's a elementary screening done at Kabul for those who are symptomatic. Additional screening takes place at the temporary safe havens. And then, of course, upon arrival here at the United States, there's screening that's done as well. So it's on everybody's mind, believe me. I mean, we're also mindful of the health of our air crew and our troops at the airport. It's a constant process, and we're not leaving anything for granted. We're taking it seriously. Sylvie?
She has a phone.
If they're flagged for COVID any step of the way, are they pulled then?
I don't know the exact medical process. Let me go over here. Apparently I'm missing out. Yeah, go ahead. Sylvie, I'll come back to you, I promise.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. We are hearing different statements from the White House, Pentagon, for example, number of troops, operation in Kabul, etc. Can you talk about why there is a consensus among the highest level of United States? Is there any communication issue?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. What's the dissonance that you're talking about?
So, for example, Biden said Al-Qaeda gone from Afghanistan, but Blinken say, yes, there is Al-Qaeda. So we can see different statements from the White House, different comment from the Pentagon. Is there any communication issue from the highest level?
No, I think you're reading way more into things than you need to. I think we're all cited on the fact that there's still an Al-Qaeda threat in Afghanistan, and as well as Al-Qaeda affiliates that we know are there. We've said that consistently. There's no gap in understanding here.
No, just for example, Saki say 11,000 American in Afghanistan, but you say 10,000 between 5,000 between 10,000. So different statement. That's why I want to ask.
The Defense Department can't speak specifically to the number of Americans in Afghanistan. I think we already addressed this earlier in the briefing. There is no firm, certain, hard number on that because not every American that goes to Afghanistan has to tell the government that they're there. We have made it clear that any American that wants to leave, we're going to find a way to get to them, or find a way to get the information to them to help them make the right decisions for transportation out of the country. But everybody's cited on that this is a dangerous, perilous environment. It's very dynamic, it's very fluid, and we're doing the best we can to move as many people as we can, as fast as we can. Gordon.
One follow-up. If they cannot reach the airport who live in Afghanistan, the Americans, don't Taliban ISIS threat for them if they stuck somewhere, if they cannot communicate with...
We absolutely understand that Afghanistan is a dangerous place right now, which is why we're trying to move as many Americans as we can, as fast as we can. And we want to get that done before the end of the month. Gordon.
Can you address the situation the conditions at Al Udeid and Qatar, which have been described as squalid for a lot of the people coming through there. And then if you could, I didn't quite understand what the general was saying earlier about the 14 different station, like the way stations, because I understood the kind of 3 main hubs to be, Ramstein, Qatar, and Bahrain. So are there way more now?
I'll let the general come up here in a second, but let me just set this a little bit. So yes, those are 3 main hubs, but we are adding to that. You've seen Italy. U.S. military installations in Italy, U.S. military installations at Spain also provide additional capability. And there are other countries in the Gulf region who are willing to take on a temporary basis some individuals. So it's a bigger, broader sort of hub and spoke network than it was just a few days ago. And I'll let the general fill that out for you. On your first question, just let me level set it right away. We are aware of and as concerned as anybody about what had been some terrible sanitation conditions at Qatar that were facilitated by the sheer numbers and the speed with which those numbers got there, and we all recognize that. And nobody here wants anyone to be less than safe, secure, comfortable, and well cared for as they go through this process. We take it very seriously, but we'll be the first to admit that there were conditions at Al Udeid could have been better. They are improving now. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that they're perfect, because they're not, because evacuees continue to flow into Qatar. And there's a lot on the ground right now. And as the general said, we're working hard to clear out that population so that we can ease the pressure there and continue to move these people along their way to their new lives. Nobody's making excuses. Nobody's ducking from this. We recognize that things were and in many ways still are not at the level of sanitation and good hygiene that we want. I can tell you that from the secretary on down, everybody's focused on trying to improve that. And as a matter of fact, and you saw a statement from Central Command last night, they are taking measures to ease that pressure and to improve conditions there. But it's something we're going to watch, not just there, but at every other temporary safe haven that we're operating from.
Got it. Before the general speaks to the hubs, can you just clarify, you said that you don't think there is a crush around HKIA currently, or less of one, or can you just clarify what you meant?
Well, that the crowd size is smaller now than it was in those first few days, and so we're not experiencing, to the degree we did, last Monday, the physical crush and chaos. I'm not suggesting, Gordon, that there aren't desperate people outside that airport who want in. Absolutely, we're not ignoring that. I'm just saying that, to Megan's question, we're not seeing the same pressure put on the system now that there was in the early days. General.
First, go back to question. Approximately right now, 5,000, a little above 5,000 are on HKIA, going through the processing, continuing to be manifested and ready to fly. So gates are still open. We will continue to assess those numbers throughout the day. When we go back to hubs and spokes, I'll give you the macro, and then we can possibly get back with you on the real details of there. So at both within the CENTCOM and the EUCOM AOR, we have main hubs. Think of it Ramstein, and then going into Qatar. But from there, within the last 24 to 72 hours, both of those commands have started building up and going from an initial operating capability to get full, what we would call smaller satellite areas, to ensure that with the throughput that we've had, that we can safely and humanitarianly, keep those people there until their flights go back into the States. When you specifically talk about, and I can just bring it up, when talking to CENTCOM this morning, as we look at capabilities, and I just talked about this a little bit earlier, but a lot of work has been done in the last 48 hours of, bringing in more portable hand washing stations, refrigeration trucks to ensure there's cool water and the food is there to ensure that people have these humanitarian capabilities.
I would also say, just as a scheduling note, this afternoon's briefing, I'll be joined by General Van Herk of Northern Command as well as General Walters of European Command. So they will also be able to address in greater detail some of these specific questions about the temporary safe havens, and you'll have a chance to talk to them directly. Laura.
Thank you. Can you commit to evacuating the Afghan commandos and other troops that are helping with the evacuation currently?
Yes.
Yes. All of them? And then
Any of them that want to leave, and we have to assume that that's all of them. They will be evacuated.
How
Yes.
many do you estimate?
I don't have an exact number. As I think we've talked about before, the general has somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600. We know Afghan forces are there at the airport with us and actually helping us in the security mission, and they will all be able to come out.
Even if they don't have SIV?
They will all be able to come out.
Okay. And then also, just as a follow-up, what is happening to the money that was intended to go for the Afghan security fund?
Yeah, obviously, and we're working closely with Congress on that, but that money is being held now. Yeah, absolutely. Let me go to the phones. I haven't, in addition to not getting one side of the room, I have not done a good job here on the phones. Dan Lamoth.
Hey, John, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Looking to check in, just get some additional fidelity on what's going on at the gates. We've heard a lot of frustration with some of these veterans groups and other organizations that are trying to assist people to get to the gates and through the gates. Sounds like there's, at least to some degree, inconsistencies on who's being allowed in, when they're being allowed in, and just some chaos there that's to a degree understandable, but also frustrating. Thanks.
Yeah. Gates continue. The coordination there is the critical piece of understanding getting through the checkpoints, and that has been a lot of the work that's been done over the last 48 hours is the coordination between U.S. forces forward there, the commanders, to ensure who comes through and what checkpoints that people are coming through to expedite things. And the key has been we have had an increase in information coming to the forces, commanders on the ground of who needs to come. I think that has been one of the increase in our throughput is understanding in all of the populations of who is where and who needs to come through the gates so that we can provide better information, which gate, when to come in, make sure those the conditions are set to come onto HKI.
Okay, I get time for a couple more. Sylvie, you have been very patient.
I wanted to go back to the airport. I know you don't want to speak about the deadline and August 31st or not, but whenever the U.S. troops are leaving, are you speaking about with the Taliban about the Taliban or a third party, a third country, about the security of the airport, to allow the airport to remain open?
I'll let the general take it. I would just say that we are in daily communication with the Taliban about the security situation at the airport now. Our focus from a military perspective is going to be whenever, and right now the plan is to end this mission on the 31st of August. I don't want to suggest that that's not what we're planning on. As we get there, as I said earlier, we want to preserve as much capability as long as we can to continue to conduct evacuations while safely removing our people and our equipment all at the same time. That's our focus right now, is on properly executing the mission and effectively and safely drawing it down. But I'll ask the general if he has any other thoughts.
No, I just think when you talk about transition, absolutely there's planning going on of how to transition all of the space that we currently occupy here in the future.
Okay, well, okay, Therese, go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's just a follow-up to my previous question. For those that are symptomatic, what are they being told when they arrive for processing? And then once they're
What are
there,
they being told?
so once they're arriving, are they being told, hey, you know, like what's the process for those who may have symptoms? I don't know how they're getting the information about where they need to go, which gates they need to go to,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. So what are they being
Well,
told?
let me take the question and see if we can get a more contextual answer to that. I suspect what they're being told and how the process is being done varies at each location because there are different demands. Obviously, the demand at Hamid Karzai International Airport in terms of timing is a much more urgent than it would be, you know, at Ramstein. So where there is obviously much greater medical capability. So I think it's going to vary, but let me see if we can get you a better answer. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap it up. We'll see you again at 1500, again, 3 o'clock, sorry, with General Van Herk from Northern Command and General Walters of European Command. I will basically turn the podium over to them, and I assume that that'll be the focus of the briefing. If I need to stick around after for other issues, I'll do that as well. So we'll see you later this afternoon. Thank you.